Hey, good morning, everyone. Great to see you. I think we are live right now, and I already see around 50 people already present. I think probably some more people will come in. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. Actually, we're going to talk about the biggest technical and technology revolution ever. We're going to talk about AI, and it has been in the news quite a bit in the last weeks and months, especially. And also quite interesting, we announced this webinar around 3 weeks ago, and because 3 weeks ago something big happened in AI. The model DeepSeek was released. So probably most of you have heard it. Was a significant better AI, better than ChatGPT, etc., from a Chinese player. So this was kind of a huge shock wave in the entire industry, especially in the tech world. And there's so many improvements. This led us also to organize this webinar today. But what has happened in the last 3 weeks, AI is moving so incredibly fast that only a few days afterwards, so this was on the 20th of January, on the 2nd of February, actually OpenAI released a model which was even better than DeepSeek. So DeepSeek had the best model, then OpenAI had the best model. Then 1 or 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure if you've heard it, there was the release of Grok 3. So that's actually the AI company of Elon Musk. So Grok 3 was supposed to be even better than OpenAI and DeepSeek. And then just this week, just a few days ago, Anthropic was released. So this were former founders of OpenAI, former employees who released the Anthropic model. So even bigger improvements. And now just yesterday, DeepSeek announced it's going to push out the newest model. So this is incredible what's happening. Just in the last 3 weeks alone, all the AI companies, they're building better models. And kind of it's a race to the top. So super interesting what's happening here. And this will have a huge impact also in the global mobility world. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think everybody who joined today's webinar will be impacted by AI. And as the CEO of NVIDIA says it, you won't lose your job to AI, but to someone who uses it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How can you use AI within global mobility compliance, and how can you benefit from it? And before we actually get it started, I would like to start a short poll. And I would like to know how many of you actually use AI in your daily work. And I will pop up the poll in a second, because then we kind of, I would like to know if a lot of you use it frequently already today or not so much. And then we can also adapt the content during this webinar. So I'm sending the poll right now. You should be able to see it on the right-hand side. So it would be very interesting to hear how often you use AI tools in your daily work today. But while you answer this, let us do a little bit of a quick intro. So maybe you don't know us yet. I have my dear colleague and a co-founder, Peter Mennen, with you today. And the two of us are going to walk you through today's session. Peter, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself. What do you do and why are you here today?
Yeah, of course. Good morning or good afternoon, good day to all of you. My name is Peter Mande. I'm dialing in from sunny Amsterdam for a change. So I'm Dutch from the Netherlands, and my background is in tax law. So I used to work at PWDs, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for almost 15 years, always in the global mobility department. I'm a tax lawyer and specializing in employer compliance when people temporarily work from a place different than the office. Together with Patrick, one of the co-founders here at WorkFlex, and my responsibilities obviously all around compliance.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Peter. So super exciting. It's especially exciting because, I'm the other co-founder of WorkFlex, and we kind of combine, you're very much focused on compliance, whereas I'm very much focused on the technology. Also, obviously, being up to date with the latest AI trends. And what we do at WorkFlex is we combine compliance around the global mobility world and together with a technology and put it into one and build a really amazing product around of this. So, but that's what we're going to talk today, the intersection between compliance and technology. So I think that's why we have a really good setup today to walk you through today's session. The session will last around 45 minutes, so another 40 minutes. And we have 5 topics planned. So At first, we're going to talk about the relevance of AI in global mobility. Then the chapter that I'm most excited about is Peter will actually walk you through some real-life applications of AI. What can we already do today, but also explaining some of the drawbacks. We will then talk about AI at WorkFlex. How do we use it internally? We give some future predictions. And then at the big end, we also have a Q&A planned. However, I would actually like us to prefer, if anybody has questions, kind of shoot them directly. So we want to have this as engaging as possible. We don't want to have like a monologue in one direction only. So if you have any questions, any things that you want to contribute, please already directly put it in the chat. And before we continue, I'm also checking the results of the poll. So around 50 of you have already voted. And we see that 35% actually use AI multiple times a day, another 30% a few times per week, and some of you only then a little bit more rarely. So I think we already see some significant adoption. So it would also be interesting to hear in the comments, how are you using it today? What are you using AI for? Like any particular use cases? We can kind of discuss around this. But then, without further ado, let's continue. And with the chapter, relevance of AI in global mobility. And I think global mobility will be hugely impacted by AI because it's such a complex field. So if we look about the typical job of a global mobility manager, they need to manage compliance when people go abroad. So the variety of use cases, let it be business trips, workations, assignments, remote workers, relocation, commuters, and. And yeah, all of this is quite complex because whenever an employee goes abroad, you kind of need to look at 8 different compliance dimensions. Starts with visa and work entitlement, up to permanent establishment, which is by itself super complex. Employment tax, social security is also related to the A1 certificates and COC, especially for business trips, but also for assignments. We need to look at PWD, then we have labor law regulation, data protection, and health and safety. And all of these dimensions by itself are super complex. And yeah, I guess I can speak for the audience. I think not a single person will be able to be a super expert in all of the dimensions at the same time, especially because they are so complex. So whenever an employee goes abroad for each of the 8 dimensions that I've shown, as a global mobility manager, if you work in compliance, you kind of need to look at a lot of different factors. So you need to look at the home country regulations, the destination country regulations, and employee demographics. So it kind of depends on the nationality, also on the seniority, like is it the CEO of a company or is it an intern? Kind of depends on the trip details. How long is somebody going abroad? Is this a business trip or an assignment on the company side? So there are billions, hundreds of millions of kind of scenarios. And this actually makes it the perfect case for AI. AI performs fantastically well if things are complex. And we received a huge breakthrough in the last weeks with the NEO models, because previous AI models, like the initial versions of ChatGPT, etc., whenever we used them, they were somewhat helpful, but they were not reliable enough to like kind of deal with huge complexity. But now, in the last few weeks, all of these models have significantly improved. So kind of DeepSeek was like starting the revolution, then OpenAI, then Grok, then Anthropic. And kind of the big innovation that we saw in the last few weeks is that the AI models are able to reason. So they're much smarter nowadays, and they're able to think and make better predictions. And we've also seen that in global mobility, they're now much better able to actually understand this like huge complexity of global mobility and are much better. So that's why we think global mobility is at the forefront to be hugely disrupted by AI. So that's why it's such a relevant topic. But yeah, without talking, I think it also makes sense to, Peter, if you take on this kind of to show some real life applications. And before we do this, I also quickly checking the chat because Elisa was asking if there's a recording available afterwards. So the answer is yes, we will send around a recording afterwards. And if you have problems with the stream not loading, so some people in the past, they have like restarted the browser and restarted it, maybe that works. Otherwise, we make sure we get your recording afterwards. And I hope for everybody else it is working. And yeah, there's also a question from Andrea. How can I be sure that the LLM data is up to date? Let me actually put this question on hold because we would talk about this. It's a big drawback of LLM, at least to some extent. But I will make sure we cover this at a later stage. Peter, so we've done a huge intro. I think everybody's like shocked up how like relevant AI is. But do you want to give us some real life applications? How are we using AI? How can global mobility managers use it today?
Yeah, very good. I'm really happy to show 2 use cases. I'm going to try and share my screen. Let's see if that is going to work. It's probably going to push you out. And everybody should now be able to see my browser. Of course, I'm a lawyer, so I still use Internet Explorer. And I'm a lawyer, so I have a healthy adversity against AI. AI, of course, can't be as smart as me. It can't be as smart as us, right? It can't get tax compliance. It can't get legal compliance right, can it? I'm going to show 2 use cases where, well, we've actually used AI ourselves just to test it out. And the first one's going to be in the visa area, and the other one is going to be in the area of cost projections, like one of the most classical topics of global mobility. And I think visa also obviously one of the most complex ones because, well, it changes or it differs for every individual, for every passport holder, to every destination. And then, of course, the regulations in this area change a lot. So while you're looking at the Dutch ChatGPT, because it obviously recognizes that I'm from the Netherlands, so it's so advanced, here it's asking me where it can help me with. And I've prepared a quick question just to show the demo. I'm saying I'm a Dutch passport holder and I'm intending to visit China for business from the 1st to 10 March 2025. And I'm asking whether I need a visa. Patrick, can you maybe mute? And now it's giving me the answer, and it's giving me the answer that yes, I need a visa to visit China. And as many of you, and of course I knew this myself too, I know this answer was wrong. I'm using ChatGPT 4 here. It's a pretty old model. It's only old in terms of maybe a month and a half, as Patrick just introduced. But this was one of the biggest downfalls of ChatGPT before the recent updates, right? It was just giving wrong answers. I can actually tell them, well, isn't there a visa waiver? See this link. And then it's going to check and say, oh yeah, I might have gotten it wrong. And it's going to tell me, sorry, you indeed don't need a visa as a Dutchie because there's this special arrangement in China. So this was the problem with ChatGPT 4. If we now go to ChatGPT...
Maybe, Peter, quickly jumping in here from a tech perspective. So this is typically what we call hallucination. So ChatGPT hallucinates something. They make something up which is not right. And this is also the topic that Andrea Rieger has addressed in the chat. How can we be sure that the LLM data is up to date? Because clearly, in this example, it's not up to date. So typically what you have with some of the older models is that the AI has been trained on a data set that has been in the past. So they don't have access to the newest information. So there's always a cutoff date. Usually there's like 6 months to 12 months in the past. So the new information is not up to date. So this is the very first models that were kind of happening. And if models don't know what they don't know, and if they don't know something, they make something up. So that's the first problem. Then we had some recent advancements with the models that if they identify that they don't know something or something has been in the past, they actually start searching the web and try to find up-to-date information. But even searching the web, some of the websites still maybe have old information. They have not the visa regulations up to date. So it's kind of a problem that we have been dealing in the past, but it's already getting better. And I think Peter now also showed like kind of the more recent models some of the new improvements that were only released a few weeks ago, how they are already much better.
Exactly. Yeah, so now I've selected ChatGPT 4.0, so basically the most up-to-date version, asking exactly the same question, and it's giving me immediately, thank God, the right answer. What's actually really cool, if I would have said, I think it's going to take a little bit too long. I said I want you to deep research it instead of just giving me an answer, and do the deep research, and I can quickly actually show it later. But what it's now going to do is not only just give me the right answer, it's going to ask some questions and then do a much longer version of the answer. And like, to be honest, this is not even comparable to what I used to create when I was at PwC or at any other Big Four. To be honest, it's much better. It's much more extensive. It's much nicer to read. And especially it's much faster, because it would take approximately 5 minutes to create the text. And it's in super great detail level. And most importantly, it is correct. So that's the first use case that I wanted to show. Visa regulations, super complex, always updated all the time. And back in the day, 2 months ago, ChatGPT would get it wrong. Nowadays, ChatGPT is getting it right. And well, we will talk about later a little bit as well. This is only just the beginning. If ChatGPT is getting it right, all of a sudden, 2 months later, look what AI is going to be able to do in another 2 months or in another 2 years. The other one that I'd like to show you.
So maybe also important for those of you who want to recreate this, what we kind of use in the new model, we use the deep research model of OpenAI, which is only available in the OpenAI professional plan, which costs around 200 euros a month. They already made plans to already make it available for a much cheaper version. But some of the newer models also that we're showing today, they're usually behind a paywall, cost a significant amount of money. But kind of what we want to show here is the models are getting so much better. And now we actually have real use cases in global mobility. So if you want to have the deep research, you need to pay currently 200 euros a month, or use some of the freer models, for example, that are published by DeepSeek or Grok.
Exactly. So I've already prepared this one, because with the deep research functionality on, it usually takes 4, 5, 6 minutes. At least it will take too much time to do a live demo now in this webinar. But what I've prepared is a cost projection. I think one of the most classical GM topics ever. Maybe you're currently using another software for this. Maybe you're using external specialists for this. Whatever you do, probably it's very time consuming. It is very expensive. And AI is going to change this game. I can tell you this. So what I've told ChatGPT just to start with, I said, I'm a global mobility manager and I want to send a German employee on an assignment to our US subsidiary. I'd like to create a cost projection, but first tell me what you need in order to create it. It then asked me 12 questions. So on assignment duration, on whether I'd like to reimburse or provide relocation, visa immigration questions, etc. I quickly answered these questions. I really took very little time, sometimes by just saying option 2 or by saying no to a particular answer. Sometimes I gave a little bit more information. For instance, I told them the individual's making 100,000 euro gross now in Germany. The salary should be adjusted for local living standards. And I also would like a general mobility bonus, but both the, let's say, the cost of living allowance and the global mobility bonus are for you, ChatGPT, to quantify. So I answered a little bit differently every now and then it started its research. It took 16 minutes and it took 18 sources. And then the outcome is incredible, if you ask me. So it's a long read. I'm not going to go through it with you in detail, of course, because the time doesn't allow it. But I'd like to highlight a couple of things. Obviously, it's going to do the rather basic calculation from 100,000 euro gross to the New York City equivalent with a nice bonus. And what it's doing here, it's saying, look, I'm thinking of an expatriate bonus between 5 and 20%. New York City, that's what I told ChatGPT the assignment is going to, is very desirable. So it's going with a lower end expatriation bonus because they're seeing no extreme hardship, which is a detail if you're a specialist in the area, which is quite insane and very, very good that it got it so rightly. And then it just goes on and on. And another thing that I'd like to highlight here is for housing. So it just gives a suggestion. Probably many of you are using pretty expensive databases for this today that gives cost of living overviews. To be honest, they're not necessary anymore because ChatGPT has these databases as well, or it just does the research on a real-time basis. And I think it does it very good. It doesn't only do the research and tell you this is the rent that you should be paying. It even verifies or justifies in the deep research mode. It says, look, I think this should be the answer. And then it's going to look into other sources, whether its previous answer makes sense. And now it's going to check, look, are we spending the kind of the current rate of the budget on housing? And it says, oh yeah, so the answer that I came up with is kind of in line with what I'm seeing New York City citizens paying for their rent, which is, if you think about it, really, really good. And then it just goes on. I'm not going into detail, but I'm going to show you the summary because, of course, it's a little bit long. But this is a memo that you would have to pay 5,000 to 10,000 euros for probably today if you're asking a specialist for this. Going to go through even exchange rate risks. Giving the summary, I asked for a table because it was a little bit too much for me. And then it gives an awesome table with a cost projection that is super tailor-made for this case. Of course, I can continue to talk to ChatGPT, say, I'd like this to be changed. I would like that to be improved. And it's going to do it within seconds. I think this second use case shows how incredibly good AI has already become by now, that it's going to do cost projections, in my view, at least up to the level that specialists are doing today, but they are using days of your time and they're invoicing thousands of euros for this. So I think that's the main lesson learned for me for cost projection. And I think the visa use case, the first use case, really cool, shows how fast AI is developing, how fast AI is improving.
Yeah, this is really incredible. And what we see here now, and also when you saw it, it asked additional questions to Peter about the current assignment. So it didn't take assumptions, actually thinking and asking for additional input, just like a lawyer or consultant would do to make a more accurate assessment. And on top of this, what the model producers like OpenAI and DeepSeek, etc., what they taught the models is to do extensive thinking, to use tech what's called tokens, to use more tokens to actually think about the problem and to add more compute power to this. And that's why we see this like very incredible results that we are super impressed by. And also remember, this is only the beginning. It's getting crazier and crazier every single week, and they're getting so much better. While the benefits are great, I think we also need to clearly outline some of the shortcomings. Some of them were already mentioned in the chat. So Peter, you mentioned some of them, but can you maybe also quickly explain here, especially with your former background at PwC, what worries you about AI?
Yeah, so obviously the first one, wrong assessments, is quite painful. When I tried out the visa one for China, I knew the right answer, and then it's okay. But if you genuinely don't know the correct answer, relying on at least the older version of Chat, it would be rather painful because it would be very wrong. So, and of course, it is improving very strongly, but the sensitivity will always remain around, well, is this really correct? I think with the justifications and the verifications, we see massive improvements, but still it's a danger or it's a challenge to overcome. I think also the second one, not such a big believer in it, but of course, AI is not the solution for everything. You have to still know what you're talking about in order to get the right assessments from ChatGPT in this case. And especially, there's so many other things around cost projections, approvals, of course, initiating downstream services. So look, AI is going to be helpful for use cases or for, let's say, knowledge, and we'll get to that in a second, but it's not entirely fit for any purpose. And the last one, well, especially in Germany, a very sensitive topic, data privacy. The example that I just put in for the cost projection was, let's say, not naming anyone individually or anything like this. But of course, if you are if you want to make a truly individualized cost projection, you're sharing quite a bit of data, and you may not share someone's name, but you're still sharing quite some private data with a system which is hosted wherever, or which is going to take this information publicly, or you don't know where it's going to take it anyway. And I think that obviously is a danger, which you can technically overcome by building your own LLM or your own AI. But let's also be realistic. That's not going to be feasible for many of us. So the data privacy will definitely remain a topic, the more detailed questions you're asking to ChatGPT.
Yeah, so I think the benefits are great, but always like pay a little bit of attention to the drawbacks. Don't take everything for granted with the AI models. We have shown you examples here in this session live where AI is giving wrong answers. So always be a little bit sensitive to it, but I think the development is crazy. And I mean, we at WorkFlex, we're working with different forms of technology, and we've been purely amazed how global mobility world is changing. And I think, Peter, you have a very long background in global mobility. Maybe you can explain how this impacts pricing for companies.
Well, I think people can see the graph. So this is how it impacts pricing, right? And it's not a fun thing to realize, I guess. But let's not be stupid. I think it's a little bit similar to the time that Uber came up. And in certain countries, taxi drivers were kind of trying to ignore its existence. Well, that didn't really work out, did it? What ChatGPT does is reducing the cost of knowledge. I've gone to school for many, many years, but ChatGPT has by now become much faster and much smarter than me. Not really cool feeling for me personally, but I'd have to accept it and rather use it to my advantage. Otherwise, it's going to be a big problem. But it's reducing the cost of knowledge. As you could see, the cost projection for which you would have easily paid 5K plus to a big four lawyer now is done by ChatGPT in a matter of minutes, and it's really good. So that's basically what it's doing, and it went down from, let's say, 5 to 10,000 euros to 20 and 50 euros with WorkFlex today. But yeah, it's basically your prediction, Patrick, that it's going to be close to zero in a matter of months or years at least. That's what it's doing. It's not necessarily reducing everything, right? You will still have approvals and other workflows, but knowledge on itself is going to be available for you much cheaper, which is ultimately a pretty cool thing. I'm seeing, by the way, a question from Andrea. Doesn't this lead to discussions with expats in the future? That's an interesting question. Probably, well, yes, you will always have discussions with experts in the future, but I fail to see how it changes compared to the situation now, because, for instance, merger databases on Cola, they are also potentially a target for discussion. So I think that certain estimates that ChatGPT is using are even better defensible than parameters that are used today, because they're old or they're intransparent. I think ChatGPT does a very good job in providing multiple resources and being very transparent on them. So yes, there might still be discussions for which you, by the way, have time now. Isn't that lovely? But I think you can very well take part in those discussions and really show to the expat why you came to certain conclusions.
Also, continuing on this slide, so what we are at WorkFlex, that's why Peter and I founded WorkFlex, we want to use technology to automate compliance processes. And in the past, we've been super successful by using technology to bring down the cost of, for example, risk assessments significantly through the use of technology. But what's now changing, what we have built our models upon, is like a rule-based engine, like a huge decision tree with the model. And with significant volume, we were able to bring down the cost significantly. Now anybody can use AI and get some of it even for free. However, often these technologies are not fit for purpose because you need a lot of other things. You maybe need approval flows, you need A1 certificates, visas, PWDs. So I cannot do and automate everything for you. But still, also when you're using technology, when you're implementing technology within your company, to automate some of these processes, a lot of it will be AI. So we have around 15 minutes left, and we want to give you some examples of how we at WorkFlex use AI internally, and also give you some future predictions. And before going through this, I'm not sure if all of you know what WorkFlex does. So let me give you a quick recap of what we do at WorkFlex, and then let me tell you what the role of AI is. And essentially at WorkFlex, we have developed a software, and with the software, we automate all the different use cases for global mobility. So we do it mainly for business trips, we do it for work from anywhere, or like often called workations, and then also assignments. And at WorkFlex, whenever somebody goes abroad, before they go abroad, we do a so-called risk assessment. So you remember the slide that I showed in the very beginning, gonna look at permanent establishment, visa, labor law, and we kind of look at all the kind of risks. Then in the second step, we also support companies with compliance handling. So it kind of depends on the trip, could be an A1, a COC, PWD, visa, instructions, etc. And then the third step, we also give support and liability. So kind of what we offer to clients is an all-in-one solution to manage business trips, workations, and assignments. And that's we do this by combining compliance, so everything usually the Big Four lawyers would do, or like the specialists, and we combine it with technology. And we at WorkFlex, we are around 100 people now. A lot of us in the tech team, a lot of us are lawyers, also Big Four backgrounds. We kind of combine these two elements. And around 500 of our clients use us today. I also see some of you are here today, some of our clients, which is fantastic. And WorkFlex will also use this new technology in AI to improve client experience. But let me also be straight. Not everything can be automated with AI. AI is not the magic source for everything. So we use a lot of different technology stacks within WorkFlex to automate processes. So for example, we have our own approval flow. We enable clients to get reporting, dashboards. We integrate with the HRIS, with travel tools, etc. So while AI can be an answer to some of the things that we can do, a lot of the things are also done with other technology, which just makes sense. And let me actually start, and I think that's where usually also what we've now seen, what Peter showed. AI is super interesting in the first one, knowledge and risk assessments. So that's a big part of what we do. So whenever an employee goes abroad, we evaluate kind of the risks. Peter, you are responsible within WorkFlex for the risk assessment logic. Maybe you can give us an idea, how much do we use AI today to improve those assessments?
Yeah, of course, and it also links nicely to the question from Lucas. Thanks for the question in the chat. I think it's a very good question. So today, the vast majority of our compliance logic is not AI powered because, I'm a lawyer, and I think I've gone to school for many years for a good reason, and I do not trust AI yet enough to the extent that I feel let's say, comfortable to really use it for many outcomes. So let's say 95% of our compliance engine is decision tree, or it's rule based, and those rules have been worked on by me and my team instead of whether them being used on by an AI. We do use AI for a minor number of use cases. And then we don't use it one-to-one, but we use what we call probabilistic AI. So it's rather giving us comfort than telling us what to include directly. And I think, Lucas, that also plays into your question. Of course, we've actually seen cases already where I think especially airliners were held liable for their AI customer support telling something to a particular traveler. And even though the airliner said, yeah, look, but it was a wrong answer, it was the AI doing it wrongly, the traveler was still, let's say, granted, or was put in the position that the AI could be believed, and the airliner had the problem. I think we see the same a little bit, but if you drill down the knowledge that we are using in daily life, and that you're also getting from tax consultants or lawyers, quite often it's not necessarily about right or wrong. If you look at the cost projection, it's never really right or wrong. You want comfort, you want resources, you want recommendations. Could those be wrong? Not necessarily. I think you can argue with them, but there AI is an incredible use case. If you're answering the question, or if you want a question answered, do I have to pay taxes in New York City, for instance? Yes, then I think it's a little bit different. And then you might either ask lawyers immediately, or you might want to get the assurance from lawyers on your AI outcome for now. This being said, I think even within a year, this whole discussion will probably be outdated, and everybody will rather say, look, why would I doubt ChatGPT or a well-trained LLM? Because it's obviously much faster and much better than the lawyer. They're using exactly the same resources, so it can't be wrong. But that's for the future. For now, I think you need to play that balancing game a bit.
Yeah, so this kind of covers our risk assessment. So we can't trust it 100%. Also, as Peter said, sometimes there's no right or wrong, and then especially AI still fails to do this. So we cannot trust it fully. So we are very much focused on a rule-based, see much better accuracy. We see for like vocations and business trips, especially our engine, very much focused on rule-based. For assignments, you, for example, also see in the cost assessment, we use a little bit more AI, but only to like around 30%. So a lot of this around it is still like based and rule-based. But there's a lot of other things that we do at WorkFlex. So we experiment a lot because we are like the forerunners in technology. Another thing that our technical team is currently playing around is an own chatbot. So actually it's live. So if you go, for example, on our website and you go to the resources page, on the bottom right, there's a small, kind of also chatbot. But how it differs from OpenAI, that we trained the chatbot based only on our internal data. So only data that we trust, that is verified by lawyers, etc. So I can easily ask it, for example, what is a one certificate? And it will then directly search within our internal data to give a result. If it doesn't have our internal data, it will not give the result. So in this case, it tells us what a one certificate is. And I can also chat with it and say, okay, how can WorkFlex help with this? So I think this is one of our only example to already shows now how WorkFlex can help with it. It's an example of how we are experimenting it, also using our own knowledge, which is like vetted by lawyers using this. And we run a lot more experiments to kind of find value also for our clients. Actually just noticed that I didn't share the proper screen, so I shared the slides. Because
we were seeing the website, no worries.
Oh, you were seeing the website. Okay, fantastic. So that's one example. Last example I want to show you is how support is dealt with. I think that's also in the media very often discussed. Typical customer support will be automated with AI. So on WorkFlex, if you're a client of ours, all the users, they have access to our 24/7 support. So usually it's in the bottom right, like a chat icon. You can chat with us. And we also have trained the chat because a lot of the questions we always get the same. For example, how do I reset my password? How do I make a new trip? I have a question on compliance. So we kind of train the model. And we use an external tool called Intercomfort. And this is the statistics from the last week, from the last 7 days. So we got 386 conversations and support tickets from our clients. And we see in 42% of those, an AI agent was involved to some extent. So this doesn't mean that it fully answered the question, but maybe the AI was asking some clarification questions, maybe directly answering the question, which is fantastic because the AI can answer in real time, so super fast. But we also get a lot of more complex questions. They're like deep dive into like compliance parts where AI will not be able to take over. So then one of our teammates replies. So it's another use case in which AI can benefit also clients. And this is also only the beginning. Looking at the time, we have around 5 more minutes. And we saw now the crazy impact of AI, and that was allowed to make some future predictions. And I think when working with AI, it's very important to note we're just in the very, very beginning of AI, or again, as the CEO of NVIDIA puts it, we are in an iPhone moment of AI. So this is the very beginning. This will open a lot more possibilities. So what we're kind of seeing today is just the tip of the iceberg. And just in the last 2 or 3 weeks alone, so much has happened in the AI world. So give it another year, 2, 3 years, 5 years. Everything what we know today, how we worked in global mobility, will change. So these are our top 3 predictions for the next 5 years. So maybe, Peter, we do another webinar in 5 years, and then we can kind of recap on this, whether they were true or not. But in our opinion, the first thing that will change, or rather die, is the big 4 global mobility consulting. Peter, maybe you can quickly add something to this, because you previously worked at the big 4 global mobility consulting company. How do you see the impact on those bigger companies?
Well, very strongly, like in a negative way. It doesn't sound nice. It will die. Of course, these people are smart, thank God, so they'll find something to do. But the classical way of consulting, you as a client going to PwC or Deloitte and asking a question and getting a long memo back after a week or 2 and a big invoice another week later, that's just not going to cut it anymore. So you will be able to do yourself a lot internally. And I think if there will be any consulting, it will be very much focused on rather on larger transformational projects, or like we've seen with the question of Lucas, giving assurance. So you will be able to create the memo yourself, and you just want a specialist to stamp on it, say, yeah, look, I've quickly checked it, and that's okay. And that's obviously a very different business case for the big 4 than they are used to today.
Yeah, so they really need to think about how the business will change. Let me cover the last 2. We think your role as a global mobility manager will greatly change in the next 5 years. I think it goes out, it's already very clear. 90% of the GM case can already be automated. So you as a global mobility specialist can focus on the more complex cases, which is great because that's where you add most value. But also, whereas in the past, the global mobility manager had doing a lot of things manually, I think in the future, the role of global mobility is also to oversee technology rather than doing the work themselves. So using AI, using tools like WorkFlex, kind of overseeing it, training it, and making sure it's correctly used in the organization. And this way you can get much more efficient, but also see much more effective and making better assessments, kind of supporting the organization. So to sum it up, I think AI will greatly change it. I hope this was a very helpful session for all of you, kind of opening the eyes what is possible today with AI. For those of you who don't know us yet, we support clients with workation compliance, business travel compliance, assignment compliance. We use the up-to-date technology to kind of help clients. We already support over 500 clients. So if you're interested in learning more, what we always offer is like free consultation sessions and get-to-know sessions. So if you go to our website on getworkflex.com, you can also book a short consultation session with us, and we'd love to get to know you. And thanks everybody for attending. It was a fantastic session. Hope to see you at some point in a meeting or in another webinar. Enjoy the rest of the day. And thanks, Peter, for also supporting me here and showing all those crazy compliance use cases.
Always. Thank you.